Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. Retired from the military and civil service, Robert Wright was an air traffic controller. And when he retired in 2012, he decided to drive a train for the Utah Transit Authority. It was then he started to deal with PTSD he didn't even realize was the source of his anger. Thanks to the VA, he got to the bottom of it, and what turned out to be the cause might surprise you. Robert, give us some insight as to what you were going through.
I can tell you this much. PTSD is a kind of a thing that I don't even understand it. Just a general understanding of PTSD is this. You have a traumatic situation and there is something that happens to you that something else triggers it. In other words, my reaction to PTSD was, when I got triggered, was anger. I was working for the UTA, operating these commuter trains and stuff like that. And when my wife got cancer diagnosis, I decided I was going to quit that so I could be closer to her and help her through it, because she wanted to do it naturally. And she had all kinds of doctors pinging on her about having an operation and all this other stuff. And she didn't want to do that. So I wanted to be home to help her. The book itself deals with, in the last week of September 2017, I was given a task by the VA to look into the 4 wars that I was involved in. And it coincided with the time after I found out about her cancer. It coincided with the time I was going to quit work. So in that last week of work with them was when they gave me this tasking. And that's what prompted me to write this book, is all of these pieces were fitting together all of a sudden that told me I need to express what's happened. Because I didn't even know about, I'll be honest, I didn't even know I had PTSD. I just thought I had a rotten attitude towards certain things that I didn't like. And other people noticed my anger. And my anger was usually...
like, did you overreact to things?
Yes. Yeah, that was basically it. I even mentioned that in the book about the fact that I needed to act out my frustrations. And it all began in 1968, for Pete's sake. When I went into the military in December of 68 and found myself in Vietnam in a place called Khe Sanh in 1971. And there was this thing, like, first time I ever voted in my whole life. And I was a Bobby Kennedy fan. I loved him. I loved his brother. And I was just dyed in the wool. I was going to vote for him because this was the first time I could get to vote. And I'd vote for Bobby Kennedy. And then he got killed. And then the only 2 people left was Hubert Humphrey and Nixon. And what a choice. So I voted for Nixon because he said he was going to end the war. I didn't agree with that war, and I still don't. And I thought, well, doggone it, he can't know everything. He can't be involved in everything. And then I found out years later, after being in Vietnam, I found out that my thoughts about Nixon and what he was doing and so forth were dashed. He engineered stop the peace talks In other words, he wanted to end those peace talks so he could have a war that could carry on and he could get elected and then again reelected if he had that war. And he made some kind of an effort to try and bring it to an end. And so that particular battle in Quezon, was Nixon's Vietnamization program. In other words, he was trying to get the Vietnamese to take over the fighting. So that's what triggered my anger, was finding things like that out.
Right.
And then the same thing goes on with like Bush. I mean, everybody applauded his reaction to those people that were encamped in Afghanistan. But then he moves to war. He changes the war. He turns around and says, I'm going to attack Iraq. And that was another period when I was absolutely beside myself. And I didn't know what the heck was going on.
So you were getting angry about these things, which is totally understandable. But somehow you ended up being assigned by a VA therapist. So at some point you sought out therapy.
Right.
And they wanted you to review the source of your anger, and ultimately it was because you were suffering from PTSD. I guess the question I have is what do you want the reader to come away with? What do you want us to better understand PTSD?
Well, yes, that was not necessarily my primary aim at the time. My aim was the things that triggered my PTSD, why the PTSD happened, why people need to look at PTSD as not necessarily a sign of weakness, but it's actually a sign of strength.
Right.
It's not something that a person can just turn around and say. I mean, you take a look at anybody, whether it's a person who has been raped or somebody who has been in a terrible accident or something like that. It's not the event necessarily. It's whatever there is out there that triggers that makes that happen. And that's the point I wanted to try and get across to people is what is the trigger? If I take a look at that trigger and then I can sort it out in my own mind, I may not, and in fact I don't, change my thoughts about war and political figures sending people to war for their own personal reasons instead of some reason that makes sense.
Right.
I fully agreed. You'll see it all through the book. I fully agreed with the Balkans conflict just simply because it made sense that we stop the genocide
Right.
of Muslims.
Right.
And that made perfect sense to me, and I was glad to get involved. When I got to Iraq, I was once again disillusioned. All this time, I thought back in Vietnam that I had left a part of me there. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does.
I left a chunk of myself back there in that traumatic event. Okay.
I just want to know why the name A View from a Train.
It was basically because that was my job. I was working for the UTA when I was assigned this assignment to go out and review the 4 wars that I participated in to find out what created the PTSD in me. And so I'm operating the train while I'm reviewing these wars. In other words, I talk a little bit about what's going on with the train and all that kind of stuff, and how the train affects me in terms of not wanting to hit people, not wanting to kill things. And because that all developed back then. But what I was saying is, I thought I had left something in Vietnam because I came home a much colder person than when I left home.
Right.
And so I thought that even though I was older and I was in the Air National Guard, that by volunteering for these different other wars that we were involved in, I could find that piece of me again and fix it. But lo and behold, I was in Iraq, I was in Kuwait, I was in Afghanistan, and I found nothing. I found nothing but more disappointment in my country's leaders, mainly Bush, in his attempt to satisfy whatever it is he's trying to satisfy by doing that. I never drew a connection until the book was done. I never drew a connection between Republican presidents and what I had gone through. But it's kind of a tangled thing. And you asked me why a view from a train. It's actually, the view is a view of that past trauma.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense. Robert, you've written a great story here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Samson Brown brings us a collection of poetry entitled Midlife Crisis on Infinite Earths, a title that doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what's in the book. Now, you say writing has been the one constant in your life.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't ever remember learning how to read or write. I just remember knowing how to do it. I'll just tell you that. Okay.
What kinds of things have you written throughout your life?
Well, I started out with lots of poetry, lots and lots of poetry. And then I went into short stories, and then I discovered comics. And then when I discovered comic books, my whole life changed because I wanted to write comic books my whole life.
What comic books?
Oh, man. Anything. I'm a big Captain America guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big, like, Marvel superhero guy. Always have been. That stuff got me through a very rough childhood. I didn't have much of a father figure. My dad wasn't there. My mom was an extremely abusive woman. And I found comfort in the role models of comics. You know what I'm saying? Because there was like no guys in my life doing anything that I think a man should do. A whole bunch of losers selling dope and that kind of stuff. You know, but then when I discovered Captain America and Spider-Man, those were guys who stood for bigger things than what they should be standing for. And I was like, I like men. I thought that that's what a man should stand for, a higher calling. And the guys in my life weren't standing for nothing. So I found all my role models in comics. That's why I fell in love with comic books.
You know, at least you found it.
Yeah. Well,
you realized at some point something's wrong here.
Yes.
Something's not right. But you took clearly a very dark turn when you wrote Midlife Crisis on Infinite Earths. Where did this come from?
Well, that's lifelong right there. And the Samson Brown persona, the reason why I wrote that under his name is because when I write stories, I like to write as the character the story is about. And the similarity between me and Samson are pretty much the same. I've got schizophrenia. He has schizophrenia too. So it was easy for me to put the pieces together under the guise of him trying to help himself because no one would listen. No one cared about the things he went through. He spent most of his life alone, just like me. And so when I wrote that, it just seemed natural to find some of my more darker pieces. You know what I'm saying? To reflect this man's life because he has been through so much negativity, but I also wanted to put some positive stuff in there too, because I don't want people to think that, you know, you have to live your whole life sad and alone. You know, you can strive to be better. You can strive to find love and faith and things like that to make it to fulfill your life, you know?
But, you know, I'm reading the synopsis here. There once was another me who lived in another world. We all made the same choices, except he married a different girl.
Yeah.
She was a monster, a literal shape-changing demon. All right. Who only wanted the life found in his semen. Okay. 2 kids later, her love turned to scheming. One day while he slept, she sawed his head off. The children ate his legs off. I mean, where did this come from? What is this story about?
Well, that was specifically wrote for the back cover of the book. Okay. That's why I even mentioned that his sacrifice was necessary. All right. Because in Samson Brown's mind, all these different pieces, every piece in the book is a different version of himself that he's able to hear and see throughout different areas of the multiverse or whatever. And so, in a sense, that's his therapy, to listen and hear the lives of these other people. And that particular one right there, when they said, well, you need something for the back cover. And I didn't have an idea of what to write. So I was like, well, I'm just going to write something dark and creepy to get people's attention.
Is the book a series of stories?
Well, it's a collection of poems, all actuality. Okay. It's a collection of poems, but each one reads like a short story. Each one represents a different version of this man from a different time and place that he's able to reach out and hear and see in his mind. Okay. And then he writes their stories down because it helps him deal with his own life, to know that there's other people out there like him. I mean, it's very, very strange, because I didn't think it would end up like that. When I first got the idea, I had thousands of poems just sitting in my books that I had written over the years, from when I used to rap and even before when I used to rap. And some of those pieces date back to when I was like a teenager, and they just stuck with me. And I thought that they were still relevant with the things that people are going through, because, of course it's a work of fiction. So I don't want anybody thinking that these people are actually real.
No, they're demons. I don't think anybody thinks demons are real, but you never know. Yeah. I'm wondering, though, do these poems explore the different facets of Samson's personality? Because he has several. He has many. And do they all tie together in a story? Well, or is each one a separate standalone poem?
Well, yes and no to all those questions, because there's the returners and the standalones. Now, the standalones are just one shots. These are guys or girls that he witnessed, and they only showed up maybe once or twice, but they were dedicated to a cause that was so important to them that they were willing to sacrifice everything for that cause. Okay. And then there's the returners. Now, the returners is a different breed, because these are people who have came back to him several times over the years with different parts of their stories. Like water. Water is the perfect one. I was down by the water, okay, and I saw a disturbance in the water. And a man made of water spoke to him, okay, and it told him the power of water over 3 days. And all it's about is the power of water. That's it. And that one right there is really good, because it's just about water. And no one will believe that he saw a man made of water. All right. But they'll believe what he learned about water. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. That's one of the first of the returners. It's 3 parts to that.
Give us an idea of what we're going to find.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to read one from the standalones and one from the returners. Okay.
Okay.
This one is called Follow Me. This young man committed suicide. He and his girlfriend made a suicide pact. He went through and she didn't. This was his suicide note. It was once said that my hand was held by the divine. Your hand was clenched tightly in the other one of mine. Follow me. I saw a road that lasts through each of our past, works at the present and dead ends at the future. Follow me. You hesitated. I patiently waited. Destiny's pull is too strong. The sweat from my palms dripped when our grip slipped. I blinked and you were gone. Follow me. So in that particular instance right there, they made a suicide pact, and she chickens out, but he goes through with it because he's that guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then human achievement. I'm only going to read the first part of this one. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, this particular Samson here, he was a government employed scientist and a career guy for 20 plus years. He became a whistleblower once he discovered some disturbing information regarding the applications of his work. It all began with the will. Since then, we've been rolling downhill. Advance is only recognized by those making the meals, the big deals, investing capital in them cats on the hill, while the common folks are left to beg, borrow, and steal. We got buildings that extend thousands of feet in the air. The internet peddles everything from silverware to edible underwear. Now that I have your attention, I need for the country to pay attention. This information I have is going to force some decisions. I already chose mine. That's why I stand alone in this mission. Whether you love me or hate me don't make a difference. Every person that has ever lived has been your sister or brother, with God being the father and earth being the mother. And here we are so modern, we can't get past hairstyles and skin colors. So the only thing we really achieve is killing each other. And then he says, what's the source of our pride? Human achievement. What sins we cannot hide? Human achievement. What's the name of your God? Human achievement. Now, who's believing and who's deceiving? And that's the first part.
That sounds like a rap song. It
Actually,
does.
actually, it started out as a rap.
Where are you going with this stuff? You're writing all this stuff down. You publish this. Now what?
Now, I wrote this to prove a point, I think, because I was told when I was a kid by my mom. My mom was extremely negative in my life. She didn't believe I could do anything other than just make. She literally said, "The best I can hope for is making sandwiches and fixing cars in life."
Wow.
Oh
God.
man,
I'm sorry.
don't worry about it because she's dead now. And I'm still alive. So anyway, my mom was my number one enemy. She never wanted me to do anything in life. And she constantly, for lack of a better term, shit on anything I wanted to do. And so I remembered when she told me that, and I made a point. I'm gonna publish the book just to show you that Black men can publish books. All right. And she's dead now, but I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? Because now that it's done, I know I can do it. So now I intend on getting much, much more published. I have done the stage shows before. I have traveled around and did the music and that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, I have my greatest hits on my phone, okay, from where I was doing my music, but I've been spreading the word amongst my friends. I got a lot of friends that's deep into social media, you know what I'm saying? And my girl's been talking to me about some stuff too, because she has a little YouTube channel and stuff like that. So, I would love to be like the New York Times bestseller guy, you know. I would love that, you know what I'm saying? And
Right.
that is one of my goals. But, with me, it was just the fact that I did it, you know what I'm saying? I'm still like trying to let that soak in, you know what I'm saying? That's my whole life.
All right.
It took me a long time to get here because I had to deal with so much nonsense throughout my life, you know?
Well, Samson, keep going. Keep moving.
I have no plans to stop. As a matter of fact, I have 2 more versions of Midlife Crisis I plan on putting out very soon. The second version will have a new section of Samsons for you guys to enjoy. All right, the weirdos. All right, their stories are so weird.
We love the weirdos.
Yeah, their stories are so weird that I couldn't include them in this one. And then the last Samson Brown piece I'm gonna put out will be a novella in which he meets a counterpart face to face, and it doesn't go like he thinks it is.
I believe you.
Okay, because this person is diabolically evil, and she came with a plan. Okay. I plan on going into novels, and then I plan on trying to get a job at Marvel Comics. That's the dream job.
There you go, Marvel Comics.
That's the dream right there. I have a friend who already works for Marvel. We grew up together in Cleveland. Right. We used to hang out at the comic stores together and always chew the fat. And about 9 or 10 years ago, he hit me up on the email and told me what I had to do to get a job at Marvel. And the first step was getting something published, getting something they can read so they can see that you can write, you know what I'm saying, so they can gauge your talent. And that's your resume. You know what I'm saying? So now that I've got this out there, and I'm planning on dropping a couple of more pieces, and then I'm gonna try to submit a resume to Marvel and see what they say, because that's really what I want to do.
Well,
honestly.
I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you very much.
Our next author goes by the pen name Anphirion de MACK, and he's written a book about choices. It's entitled Ant Dog Street Tales. Now, tell me about this pen name.
Well, Anphirion comes from, it's like Anthony, you know what I'm saying? Like, my name is Anthony, right? So I took the A-N off of that, and Furion is from fear because of the streets. I've been through a lot, you know what I'm saying? The fear of the streets in mind. And I just, took it and put that from a lot of other stuff that, once I had been was like, they called me Mac Ant. So I just took that and put that the Mac, So
wait, this is a book of poetry?
Mm-hmm. It's a book of poetry about street life.
What do you mean when you say street life?
It doesn't just happen. Like, you can get caught up or misled. It's like being misled in the streets or getting caught up in violence and the beat down of the streets.
What led you there? Do you talk about that in your poetry?
Yeah, that's what I talk about, the choices.
Okay.
It's choices that we make that determine, the rest of our life. And some of my poetry that I have, like being misled, is misleading. People take another person and take what he don't know and what they do know about the streets and mislead him, you know what I'm saying? Use him for their advantage, for their good, you know. I've been there. I've been in those situations where, you know, someone who knew more than I did about those streets, and they took me up under their wing and showed me things that I wasn't supposed to see as, you know, as a child, you know. One story is Don't Talk. And Don't Talk is about a guy that through his whole life, him and his friend, they were always together. When you saw this friend, you saw him, you know what I'm saying? And he took this guy and he thought that whatever went down with them, it would always be, you know, just them. Now, this is not my situation, but it's some things that the guy, you know, that I saw while I was out there. They was going out doing things, you know. He thought that it would never get out what they do, you know. He'd never betray him. But in the end, his friend took everything that they knew and used it against him. But he was aware, but he wasn't. He didn't want to believe he could be taken advantage of like that. But in the end, they were around 22, 23, still young in the prime of their life. But it's the choices that you make that can, you know, change your whole life. And then, you know, in some stories that I have, it's like, it's stories in here that I just really, you know, take, like staying in check.
Can you tell me one story or read me one poem so I can really get a handle on what I'm going to find in your book?
Okay, yes, I can. Let's see here. Okay, like I was saying, this one here is called Don't Talk.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of graphic. Can I say the N-word, or do I need to just...
Absolutely. No, it's fine.
Okay. Here I go. Real niggas don't talk. It's a lesson learned. Listen to this message if you have some concerns. Phil got in someone's business that was not his concern. His body was found in a car badly burned. His whole life, his father begged him to listen and learn. Now all that's left of Phil is in an urn. 10 years to life is big sentence. His best friend showed up as the state witness. They pulled off a heist that was planned real smooth. That was Big's plan. So he said when to move. No one gets hurt. That is what Big said. 3-year-old kid shot, 2 to the head. His homeboy he knew since grade school, testifying in court, breaking the golden rule. Big still calls all the shots, always ahead of this fool. Trust no one, Big stayed old school. Protective custody, they said he was safe. Case thrown out of court, no witness, no case. Real niggas don't talk. That's the golden rule. Or your body found dead floating in a pool. Stick to the code.
Okay. Now I have a picture that I won't be able to get out of my head. What made you write this book now?
I had been writing a long time, but I didn't never think it was good enough to publish or anything. And my wife, she used to save it. The little writers that I have, she used to save them and put them in her little box. And we had a fire about a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago. And, you know, I was going through so much, and we had our business was, you know, starting, and it was, you know, we were going through the fire, the business, and we were living in a hotel. And so, you know, as a man, you know, I'm the provider. So I'm thinking, wow, you know, this is a lot on me. So she was like, why don't you just, you know, sit down, start back to writing? You used to, when you did that kind of helped you. So as a little therapy. I just started back, and the things that I started writing, whether my old writings were really more poetry on the other side of, not my life's what things that I saw, but she told me, just start writing about your life, you know what I'm saying? So I started putting it down, and I started writing, and the next thing I knew, it was I had so many stories until I was but it's another side to to these stories too, because without my wife, these stories wouldn't have never came. I wouldn't have never had the inspiration to write.
Can I just ask you, where did most of this take place?
Before I settled down here in Memphis, I was from 12 to 18. I was like in Indiana, Minnesota. Yeah, I was a floater for a while. So, and my mom, she's a good mom. She did all she could. She did her job as a mother. But I chose my path.
Really interesting, I'll tell you. Are you going to keep writing?
Yes, I am. I got another story coming out. It's called Ike, Hood Rich Ike. It's about this guy. He was selling drugs in the streets, and he had a little brother that watched him do all this, and his brother watched him until he tried to get into it and ended up getting killed. And Ike, but Ike had it's a story. It's a great story. Everybody already. They can catch a preview of YouTube at Ant Dog on YouTube.
Ant Dog on YouTube. All right, Anphirian, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Redemption Comes Full Circle is also a book about choices by R.S. O's. She writes about how those times when you think the worst possible thing is happening to you sometimes turns out to be something completely different. Now, you write about some amazing things that happened to you.
Oh my God, there were so many that is hard. I'll tell you one story that I still sends chills down my spine. And I'm going to speak at a church about it.
Okay.
I was getting my husband from the hospital 2008. And I pulled up to the hospital, and he had a carotid artery surgery. And they removed all the gunk out his neck, and they said no smoking. And I smoked like a train. And we both did. He had quit. He was in the hospital for 3 months. So he quit. But I was still smoking. And I smoked myself to death. I was like, I got to quit, but I don't know how. And I sat in front of this hospital, founded by nuns, St. Vincent Charity Hospital here in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay. It's finally changed hands, but I sat in front of the hospital and I said, "Dear Lord, I cannot smoke anymore. His life is going to depend on it. I've got to quit. I'm ready to quit. I got this last cigarette, Lord, take the taste out of my mouth." All of a sudden, I heard a knock on my car window. I rolled it down a little bit. I could not see the man's face. He was a tall man. I just saw his beard. And he said, "Do you have a cigarette?" I gave that man my last cigarette, and I have never smoked cigarettes again.
Wow.
Never had the urge. It brought tears to my eyes. I looked out my window, and I looked out my mirrors, and I couldn't see that man anymore. And where did he go? It was, oh my goodness, it sends chills through me today. And that was one of the most profound things that happened to me. I asked the Lord, and he answered me.
So this is an autobiography, and you take us on your life's journey.
Yes. all the trials and tribulations I took my mother through.
You say in your synopsis that you were an educated woman who took the wrong path in life.
Yes, exactly. Met the wrong people. You got to beware of people you meet. Everybody is not your friend. I found that out. And I was, in my 20s, and oh my goodness, the guy I met, you'd have thought he was Brad Pitt or Billy D. Williams. He was just that good looking, just a nice man. Wasn't just about his looks. He was personable. And we talked for about 2 months. He became a friend. I introduced him to my mother. I'm thinking he's a good guy. One day he told me, "Here, I want you to try this." And I'm like, "Oh, what's that? What? Try what? I don't do needles, and you ain't going to get me to do something. What?" And he pulled out everything he needed to form, I'm just going to say it, crack cocaine, because that's what it was.
Oh, my gosh.
And he mixed it up and put the baking soda and got a spoon out. And I'm like, what is this man Houdini pulling things out of his pocket? And he lit it up and smoke on. I felt like I was in a chemistry class. I tell you, I said, what are you doing? He said, just watch this. And it formed a rock. And he put it in the pipe he pulled out. And he smoked it. And I'm like, well, that's not a needle and things like that. It's just some smoke. Okay, let me try it. Okay. Stupidest thing I ever did in my life. But yeah, that's what started me on my journey to drugs.
So that was it. One hit and you were in.
I was hooked. I had the money. I worked for a living. I took care of myself. I lived by myself. I took care of me and my baby son. He was under a year old then.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you ended up going to prison?
That's a story from divine intervention. Like that cigarette incident. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll tell you. I don't care if you read my book or not. I'm going to tell you now. I was sitting in a building. Now, I'm on drugs and I'm looking for drugs. It's about 11 o'clock at night, and I'm feeling sorry for myself because my son's birthday is coming up and I have no money for that, but I have some money for drugs if I can find it. And I'm just sitting in this building and feeling sorry for myself and smoking my little drugs I had. And all of a sudden I said, well, Renee, you've got to quit. I said, dear Lord, I gotta quit, Lord. I gotta stop this. Oh, I gotta quit this habit. I gotta get off these streets. I just gotta do it. And police sirens started coming down the street. And I'm like, oh my God, something's going on. And this boy ran by the building and threw something right there in the grass and kept on running. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what did he throw? And I just prayed to God to help me, but this boy just threw something. Let me see what he threw, because it's got quiet. I don't hear anything anymore. No police, no sirens, nothing. And I left out the building and I looked down, and it was a gun. It was not drugs. It was a gun. Now, we've all watched CSI. You don't pick a gun up with your fingerprints. And so I got a stick and picked that gun up and just dropped it in my purse. And I said, I better get away from this street. And this is what happened. I got away from the street. And make a long story short, I tried to sell the gun the man told me, give it to me. It's a friend of mine. He's running around here somewhere. I bet it's his gun. Give it to me. I'm like, I'm not giving you this gun. I mean, I don't want drugs or whatever. And we tussling with it. And he said, you know what? The next police car comes down here, I'm going to tell him you got a gun. I said, oh, get out of here. And I started walking away with my gun in my purse. And a car was turning the corner. It was nighttime. I didn't know what it was till it got 5 more feet in front of me, and it was police. And the guy said, sir, officer, she has a gun in her purse. And the police stopped and got out of their car and put their hands on their hips. I wrote about it. I said, and let their backbone slip. That's how I felt. Oh, my goodness. And he said, ma'am, do you have a gun in your purse? And what can I say? Yes, I do.
Oh, my gosh.
And that was how I ended up in jail. But I had just asked the Lord, get me off these streets. Stop me from doing drugs. And then, not 15 minutes later, he said, put your hand behind your back and you're under arrest. I was like, oh my God. I said, but that's not my gun. I said, look at the fingerprints. It's probably the person you all are chasing all night. I've been hearing the sirens. Check it out. That's not my gun.
Oh, boy.
And he told me to tell it to the judge.
How long were you in jail?
Well, carrying a concealed weapon is a 3-year sentence.
But you know what? It got you off the streets. So really, you're writing about miracles that happened to you.
You could say that. I don't want to say that, but it's the truth. It's a book of miracles. That's why I'm talking to you, to let you know and people know that, wow, things happen and that you don't even expect. And it's just not the hand you were dealt in life. It's how you play your hand.
That's a great message to leave everybody with. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, man, you're so welcome. Thank you for even having me.
Dawn Drew has a question for you. Are you ready to change your life? That's the subtitle of her book, Soul Coach, Joy and Ease. I don't think I'd use the word ease to describe all the things that you do, Dawn.
I have several companies that I run. I've had a home staging business for nearly 20 years. And then I've moved over and gotten my real estate license. And then I do coaching on the side and mentoring. And now I've just opened up under Joy and Ease Property Solutions. I'm working to help sellers, home sellers find creative solutions, those people who are really needing to sell their house. And so I'm working with real estate investors. And so, I got it going on.
You're the answer girl, but you've never written before.
No, this is my first book that I've released. I've got a second one that I've started, and it'll probably take me a year to get it out with all the other things I've got on my plate. But
why all of a sudden are we writing?
Well, I've always written. I don't think I've ever published. So that's the difference. And so I've been teaching all along, and words are really important to me. And so I have the heart of a teacher. And so taking what is in my own life, and as I began to speak with people, I started asking some really deep questions of myself. And I started posting during COVID what I was talking about. I started with I am done with people pleasing. Who's with me? And I found there were a whole lot of people saying yes, as much as we've been told, let's set boundaries. Why are we not doing it? How come it fails when we get to the meat of our lives? How do we keep slipping into this? And so when I found that there were a lot of people who were starting to follow, and we were talking about the same thing, it's time to talk about the solutions I found. How do we live from a place of joy? Because I had such a strong conviction that the world did not need my suffering any longer,
right?
But that it would be best served by my joy. And so as I began to talk with just my peer groups, and especially women, we were feeling so burdened down I decided to, like, what would happen if we started using as a plumb line in our life joy? And that just led me on my path. And I thought, I want to write a book. It was basically the book I needed to read. It was the one that I wish someone had had available to me as I entered the world, this entrepreneur, but also a very heart-centered entrepreneur. And so I was in a world where people are saying, yeah, you can't run a business that way. Yeah, you're not wired for business. And then going, no, I want to do this. I feel a call to do this. I feel a very strong call to do this. And then I found success, but I had to find a lot of answers along the way. And people weren't talking to me in the voice I needed to hear. And I thought, well, then let me go be that voice.
Do we follow you on your journey through this book?
You do. It's written in sections. I've got 3 sections. So it's a really easy pick it up, put it down, let me grab it as I can. People can jump in wherever they want. But I start the place that I started was my relationship with other people.
Okay.
I found with people pleasing, it was not so much this umbrella of I'm a people pleaser. It was the messages that came up, and I was people pleasing for different reasons. And so I go through all the things that came up for me, like, I feel uncomfortable with you being uncomfortable. So I jump in and I rescue you from this. Well, that's an easy one to solve. I can learn to pause. How do we do this practically? But my message is as a woman of, it's my job to find solutions. You are more important than I am. I am abandoning myself. I'm not fixing myself, but I'll go fix you. And all the ways that I was tangled with other people. So that's the first section, our relationship with other people. The second section, because what I realized, it's not that I care so much about other people, that's the problem. I need to care less, is I am not connected enough to myself. How can I show up with a way that I don't suddenly think all about you and don't realize till after I've walked away, I've just gotten myself into a situation I don't want to be in. And I had to look at, how do I connect with myself? What does that look like? We're using language, but what does that look like boots on the ground? And that was paying attention to how I feel, or why do I feel like I should not do that? What are the messages around my emotions that I think it is not valuable, that they are irrational, that they are unimportant? Your feelings are more important than mine. Connecting to my body, because my body never lies to me. That feeling in the pit of my stomach, the lump in my throat, the headache I'm getting, so I don't have to attend the event I don't want to. My body is telling me the truth. If I will stop and listen and learn the signals of my body. And I give very concrete examples of what was showing up in my body, how my body speaks to me. And then the thoughts that I think that I'm not aware of, because I have been handed a lot of messages from my culture, from my family, things from, money is hard to come by. And how does that affect, when I go into the world as an entrepreneur, if I am carrying an unexamined thoughts that money is hard to come by, I am now giving you a discount that makes me resentful. Read back to you emotions. Resentment is a red flag. I'm doing something I don't want to. Oh, but I feel like money's hard to come by, so I don't want the burden to be on you. And how that was affecting me in my practical life. How do we begin to become aware so that then choice opens up for us to live differently? It's work. So I have a relationship with others, relationship with myself, and the last is my relationship to work. What do I believe about work, and how do I connect to my own core values so that that becomes a plumb line when I measure? Do I move on this? Do I not? Is this in alignment with who I am? Is it the right timing? What questions should we be asking ourselves? Because if we don't look at those things, we will be tossed by what other people tell us we should do. And if we're going to live with more joy, and if we're going to live with ease in our life, it is really going to be answering these questions that we are connected to ourselves, what's important to us, and then just some helpful things of how do we sort that out and answer those questions. So it's a very practical book. It's very approachable. I tell a lot of stories on myself because I want people to realize it's not, it's the everyday person who is writing, and this is not just some special spiritual guru. This is someone on the journey along with them, and this is attainable as we just show up every day, bit by bit.
I think it's really interesting that you came to this, am I correct, during COVID when you actually had a chance to sit down, think, and examine yourself? You did a lot of work, it sounds like, in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, I think, I think that work has been cumulative. I think it came to a head where it got some words around it and some very specifics, because I think I reached a place where using the recipe that everybody was telling me to do led me to a place of incredible exhaustion. And I saw no end in sight, because the way I was building, it was going to take the same tools and the same way of living to maintain the life I had built. And that was not the life I wanted for myself. And so it was definitely, there was more quiet in COVID, in the sense of, I still was one of the essential workers, and we were out there working quite a lot.
What were you doing?
With staging, with real estate, we were considered essential.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm just one of those people that I'm willing to have difficult conversations. So a lot of times in our culture, we don't talk about things that are uncomfortable.
Right.
And I just thought, I'm going to start talking about it, because as a successful entrepreneur, you can have this image, and behind the curtain, there's stuff that this is not okay with me.
Right.
How do I do this walk with other women? We are maintaining businesses, we're working, whether we're working a job, we're moms, we're spouses, we're caretakers. And when you get to a certain stage in life, I think it's important to ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this where I want to be? And COVID was a great time that everybody was asking that.
I'm assuming through the work that you do, you're able to talk about your book.
I've kind of put off an official book release because of personal life and work and prioritizing.
Okay.
So I'm in the process of doing an official book launch. Till then, it's been word of mouth, social media, and it's getting great reviews. So we're starting to gather those reviews to use for marketing. So that's my fall. Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's a great practical book.
All right. Maral Tyson was an Arabic translator for the U.S. military stationed in Iraq and never returned to her Armenian homeland, but picked up some tasty treats in her travels. It inspired her to write her book, Maral's Kitchen.
I did love cooking. When I was a little kid, I always loved, I always watched my mom when she cooked, prepared dinners, and I always loved helping her. And then when I went to Iraq for 8 years, I was never interested to cooking or food. I was like, we kind of like in the war, your job just to translate, just to save yourself. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved 2014, I went to Germany 2011. I was still not interested to cooking. And then when I did move here in 2014, I saw so much food here, so much stuff available in the state. And then I was pregnant with my son too. And then I watched Food Network so much. And then I got in cooking. I don't know. And my husband keep pushing me for it. Yeah, do it. You're doing great. I did not know I love cooking. I did not know I know to cook. Yeah. And it got to me to today. I love cooking. I love I don't know, prepare dinners, prepare lunch, make a food for friends and families.
Is there a particular kind of food that you like?
I like to try everything.
What's in your cookbook?
In my cookbook, some Middle Eastern food in it, some Asian food, some Mexican, some Americans, mix. And then my favorite, the recipe in my cookbook is a Turkish pizza. I love that. I love that food.
What's in Turkish pizza?
Is a Turkish pizza is like a flat bread, like how pita bread, but it's very flat. You make the dough. Mm-hmm. You open up and you put ground beef, onion, tomato, spices, bell pepper. You mix it, you actually chop all of it, make it very fine, and you put on top, and you throw it in your oven. It tastes so good. I wish you try it one day.
Okay, make one and send it to me. Where are you?
I wish. I'm in Colorado. If you are in Colorado Springs, I'll bring it.
Bring it over. Yeah. Are there stories with the recipes? How do you lay out the book?
I don't know. I've been like in a lot of countries. I visit a lot of countries. Like when I passed 18, when I was working in military, I always took a leave. I did not go like home to Armenia. I went to different countries. I tried the food. I gathered all the food, the recipes, the taste, everything. And then like when I moved here and I was like, I'm not working, I'm bored, I'm home, and I start cooking. And I started all of those recipes, all of those food I try and taste. I put it together and make the book.
Is it just recipes, or do you tell stories about where you found the recipes? Are there?
No, just the recipes. I never did have energy to put the stories for it.
How long is your book? How many recipes?
It's 218, 20 recipe, over 200 recipe.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and I still have so much, and I do want to put more, but the publishing company told me, no, stop it. That's too much.
Over 200 recipes. That's a lot. Can you find the recipes online?
Yeah, you find the recipes online, but it's not same. Like I have my own flavors I put. I have my own spices. Like I ordered it from Santiago, from California. My mom should live there, my family, and they have those all the Middle Eastern stores, Armenian stores, Turkish stores. I tell my mom, and she sent me all the spices and stuff from there to Colorado.
What are the spices that?
It's like a whole is all spices mixed with different stuff, with like cumin.
Give me an example.
Okay, we have some spices we use it in rice. I use a lot of all spices, Middle Eastern all spices, and I use a lot of red pepper flakes. I don't see a lot of people use that, and I don't see a lot of they use all spices too, like Middle Eastern all spices and pomegranate molasses. More like stuff here and there I have.
How are you telling people about your book?
On social media, and then I actually make a food. Today I'm gonna make street tacos and take a pictures, everything, and tomorrow write it. And I have a website. I post it and post on social media, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. And then I always told them, it's like I publish cookbook.
How do we find you and your recipes?
If you go Maral's in the Kitchen on Instagram, Facebook, website, all social medias, whatever I got reached to it. I do like 2-3 recipes in a week. I take pictures. It take a time to set up and take photos, and especially now school start, I'm gonna start slowing down for that.
Right. Is it helping make people aware of your book?
It kind of, yes, is helping.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it. I love cooking it. Sometimes I get tired. Sometimes I tell my husband, like, I'm tired and sick from cooking every day, like same routine. But I love it. Like, yeah, we have to eat.
Right.
Survive.
We all have to eat. And variety is the spice of life, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for talking to me.
Oh, you're welcome.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.